I have a thing about blood. I'm not very good with it. I'd hate to be there witnessing a road traffic accident or somebody who falls down and there's blood on the floor. I don't know where that came from. Maybe it was because I grew up in the 60s and 70s, but in the 80s, of course, we had the AIDS thing, and blood was that thing that, oh, blimey, you mustn't get and touch anybody else's blood because it could be contaminated with something, and maybe that's where it came from. I remember watching, when I did have a television, a series, many years ago now, called Doc Martin. I don't know if it's still going, but the premise of that programme was that the doctor, played by Martin Clunes he had a blood phobia, and as a doctor or as a surgeon at one point, he couldn't carry on because blood was making him feel queasy and he would throw up. And so I'm not quite that bad, but it does make me feel, as soon as I start talking about blood, I start to feel a little bit weak. I don't know what happens. Maybe it's psychosomatic. But I have been thinking about blood. I don't know quite why I started to think about it in this way, but I started to wonder, if you did have a road traffic accident or you fell and cut yourself on a glass or something and you lost a lot of blood and you were rushed to hospital, and there you were put up, with all the drips and things, and they said, right, we better get a blood transfusion going, and they work out what type of blood you are. To be honest with you, I've no idea what type of blood I am. Maybe everybody should know what type of blood they are to save people a lot of time if you're there lying there quivering a little bit going, oh God, I'm nearly off. And they say, excuse me, so what type of blood are you? I'm OA or A or B or C, whatever type there is, maybe I'm F sharp, whatever the type of blood is. But anyway, they set it up for a transfusion. But here's the thing. Have you thought, and I'm sure people have, and I'm sure this is a question that's been out there, but I haven't really considered it myself, is the blood that you're being given, although it's the same blood group, and we understand that, is how would you feel about it being, if you're, say, unvaccinated, and you're being given blood from somebody who was vaccinated? And I'm talking about the recent vaccination, not MMR or polio or any of these other things, or tetanus and sort of stuff like that. I don't think we've really in the past had a bit of a problem. I think we did have a bit of a problem with the AIDS thing, didn't we? And you had to be very careful about what blood you gave. But I wonder if there is consideration in an emergency in trying to get the right, a sufficient number of blood things into a person, and they rush to the blood bank and they open, I don't know how it's stored, they open up the fridge door and go, quick, we want some AO blood as quickly as possible, or whatever it is, and they whip it up there and they get a big bag, shove the old cable in and squeeze it through, and there you are having your blood transfusion done. But would that be a problem? Is the body going to suddenly find it's beginning to have this, well, if it's the vaccinated blood, has it got spike protein in it? And is that then going to be potentially harmful to you if you didn't have the initial injection? And if you didn't want it and you were somebody who was very hesitant about having such a thing, having the injection to begin with, and you thought, no, I don't want any of that, how would you feel if you suddenly discover that in the blood transfusion you've got that? Is that an ethical problem? Have the doctors thought about it, or does it not matter? I don't know. Has anybody thought about it? I'm sure that they are thinking about it. I'm sure there is a protocol. But I was just thinking maybe you, unless you actually say, I do not want vaccinated blood in me, it could be a problem. But what if there is no unvaccinated blood? Does the spike protein carry along in the blood? You see, I understand that there are certain protocols when you had the injection. Some places, some countries would say you have to make sure that when you have the injection, it goes into the muscle, and that's where it supposedly sits. But I understand actually the vaccine goes all over the place and gets into your heart and possibly can penetrate the blood-brain barrier. I can't say for sure because I don't really know. I'm not a doctor, so this is not me saying this is a definite thing, but this is how I've understood it from looking around on the internet, that it can move about the body. But there are some places that they don't have the protocol that it's actually just got to go in the muscle and nowhere else, that actually they just jab it in and it could end up in the bloodstream. Now, I don't know whether that's good, bad or indifferent, or makes no difference, that once you've got it, you've got the spike protein and then it's doing whatever it does within your body. Now, we have heard, of course, that allegedly, and I'm saying allegedly, not because I particularly believe it's alleged, but actually one has to do that to satisfy terms and conditions and things, you'll understand, but allegedly that there is harmful effects, can be. I mean, we know there's side effects to all things, so possibly there are side effects to it. Now, if you're somebody that does have those sort of side effects to any kind of vaccine, if it's in the blood, maybe you wouldn't want it in a blood transfusion, or over a period of time, if it's been months since you've had the injection, maybe it's all settled down and the spike protein has lost its efficacy, or has it just disappeared, died and been, I don't know, or does it remain in there? These are questions that I would like to know. But what about the other way round? If you're vaccinated and you're thinking, oh, blimey, there am I, I've lost 8 pints of blood, and very quickly I need to have 8 pints of good quality blood. But would you want something from somebody who is not vaccinated? And if you had unvaccinated blood, would that make a difference now? Would you suddenly need to have to be vaccinated again? I mean, it seems to me to be a little bit of a query. Now, I maybe seem to be making light of it because I don't really understand it, but it must worry some people, I would imagine, if they have certain beliefs or religious standings on it and that sort of stuff. But can you, for example, can you have it written in your notes like a do not resuscitate type thing? And can you trust the medical profession to carry out your notes, especially when you're unconscious and perhaps relatives or friends are not allowed in the area where you're being treated? And what happens if it's a mistake that somebody gives you the wrong type of blood? What are the repercussions for that? Because if you react badly, and let's say you had a stroke or you had a heart attack or you just felt really weird and couldn't go back to work, what would be the compensatory measures? Would there be any compensatory measures? Or would people just say, look, you were dying, you needed some blood, so that's it? Another thought that occurred to me is, if you were worried about all this sort of stuff, and personally I would be a bit worried really, could you go and donate blood of your own blood, and would you be able to put it in a bag? Can it be shoved into a fridge at very low temperatures and stored with your name on it, so that should anything ever happen to you, there's always a couple of pints worth of your blood, which perhaps you've added, you know, over a couple of days, in there, so that if something happens to you, go, this is my blood, and you can use it? Or does it go off like milk if you store it too long in the fridge? Will it go? You see, I don't know. It's funny. When you start thinking about these things, very often you're incredibly ignorant about some very important, perhaps possibly life-saving things that you go, oh, blimey, I need this blood. Or is it a problem at all? Some people may say, but it's not a problem one way or another. It really doesn't matter. But I think that some people who are hesitant about having a vaccine may well be hesitant or even flipping angry if they were to be given blood that has the spike protein in, if they've deliberately not wanted it. And I think it's absolutely right that any individual should, as a sovereign living man, be able to say, I don't want that in my body. We should all be able to say, without fear of anyone crossing the line or making a mistake or doing it deliberately, not to have something that we don't want in our bodies. Now, if you've had such a thing, if you've worked on this idea, if you've thought about this, or if you're a doctor or a nurse and you know how the system works, I think it would be reassuring if you could put it in the comments and let me know whether this is a thing or not a thing. And then I don't have to have any sleepless nights in case I get knocked off my bicycle. Not that I ride my bicycle this much. But my point is, the medical profession at the moment, I think, has been... We've gone through a period where a lot of people have lost trust in it all, and it's going to be a long time before we get back to trust. But we do need to rely on the medical people and big pharma for certain medications and things. And getting that trust back is going to be absolute paramount if we can carry on with the society that we have at the moment. And one of those things is just knowing that the type of blood that you want is what's going to be delivered.